Hey guys, I'm Kai, and I've been waiting for this new It movie for a long time. It's been 27 years since the first miniseries debuted on TV, which just so happens to be how long Pennywise slumbers between feedings, which is cool as all hell. Over the years, everyone from George A. Romero to Cary Fukunaga has been involved in attempting to remake It. Even the Duffer Brothers begged for the chance to take a shot at the movie. We'll get to that later, as well as the crazy coincidence that led to Finn Wolfhard being cast in both It and Stranger Things. For now, let's all float through its development hell and ask ourselves, was it worth the wait? This whole It the title versus It the word thing is gonna get confusing as all hell. Anyways, let's start with the novel. Stephen King had two goals in mind when he sat down to write It. He wanted to write a novel about childhood and how we lose sight of the magic and innocence of youth as we grow older. And he also just wanted to write a book with all his favorite monsters in it.
I'll bring back all the monsters that I remember from my childhood, the ones that I grew up with. Being
a child of the 50s, he grew up terrified by Universal's classic stable of movie monsters, but he got impatient waiting for them to create the dark universe. So he threw them all into it. F***ing words. The titular character preys off the fears of children, and he's able to shapeshift into whatever frightens his victim the most.
Beep, Richie!
And all the old standbys are represented in It. You've got vampires, werewolves, mummies, but none of them hold a candle to It's favorite form, the most blood-curdling monster King ever created. Pennywise, Dancy Clown. Released in 1986, the book was a bestseller, but Pennywise wouldn't become a true icon until the miniseries. ABC snapped up the rights to It before it was even published, and they got to work on developing it as a TV miniseries.
Stephen King's It will continue in a moment.
They started by hiring some serious talent that had worked on King adaptations before. First, they hired Carrie screenwriter Larry Cohen to turn the massive book into a feasible screenplay. Also, someone give that man an award because the book is like over 1,000 pages, which is ridiculous for anyone anywhere. So again, shout out to Larry Cohen, again, miracle worker, bless you. As for a director, the network hired the late horror legend George Romero, who I love. Romero and King worked close together on Creepshow, and he seemed like an incredible fit for It. Unfortunately, ABC got cold feet about the project.
We're shutting down production.
Yeah, well, we only have $1,000 left anyway.
They originally planned It as an 8-hour miniseries, but they were nervous about committing so much time and money to a disturbing horror film. They slashed the running time down to 4 hours, with commercials, spread over 2 nights. Not only that, but the strict TV content standards meant they had to cut out a lot of the novel's gore. Romero bailed, and they hired John Carpenter protege Tommy Lee Wallace to take the reins instead. The final show was kind of a mixed bag. The first half is genuinely awesome, but the story loses steam once it switches focus to the adults on night 2. I have a theory about why it kind of sucks. I think it's kind of just because like most of the premise of It is that it scares you from your child self, and like it reminds you of the fears that you've had as a child, so it's kind of hard to be scared of like grown adults being chased by another adult.
Kiss me, fat boy!
Pretty much everyone agrees on the best part of It, though.
Excuse me, sir. Do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you better let the poor guy out.
The unforgettable, evil portrayal of Pennywise by the great Tim Curry, who's getting his own title card here because he's that damn amazing. Can you believe they weren't going to cast him at first?
I am eternal, child. I am the eater of worlds and of children.
Originally, they were considering Planet of the Apes star Roddy McDowall for the title role, and he would have been a great fit for the elaborate makeup they had planned for Pennywise. But when Tim Curry was cast, he wasn't so hot on the idea. His last role with a ton of prosthetics was in the movie Legend, and he got so hot and claustrophobic that he literally tore off his skin trying to remove it. I wouldn't want to go back to that either, Jesus Christ. Anyways, so they simplified the design to just a big skull cap and traditional clown makeup. Turns out they didn't need any fancy prosthetics. Tim Curry's acting skill alone created one of the most chilling monsters in horror history.
Don't you want a balloon?
It's a performance that stood the test of time, so why even bother doing a remake? Well, let's look at how it came to be, starting with the failed Fukunaga It. In 2009, Warner Brothers announced they were moving forward with a new adaptation of It. This time the studio was fine with an R rating, but they had a hard limit of 120 pages for the new script. At about a minute a page, that's about 2/3 of the runtime of the miniseries, which still had to cut a ton of stuff from the long-ass novel. Given what happened with The Dark Tower, it's probably a good thing that this first attempt fizzled out. In 2012, Warner hired future True Detective director Cary Fukunaga to write and direct the reboot. Not only that, the script was split into 2 separate movies, one focusing on the Losers Club as kids and one on the adults. They even got as far as casting the Revenant's Will Poulter as Pennywise. I remember when that happened and there was all these edits of him as Pennywise, and I was actually really excited about that, but I'm glad Bill Skarsgård wound up with the final part. He's in this great horror series called Hemlock Grove on Netflix, everyone should check it out, so I'm a big believer in his Pennywise potential. Anyways, in 2015, Fukunaga announced his departure from the project. He wanted to make an unconventional horror film, but the studio was afraid that it would just confuse and offend the typical audience.
You want to see something strange and mystical?
No!
Rather than compromise his vision, Fukunaga left, and for a while it looked like the It adaptation would never happen. Even Stephen King called it dead on Twitter. It's a bummer all around. I would have loved to see what Fukunaga could have done with such a dark, twisted story. It's been a long time since I've seen anything as tense as that 6-minute True Detective tracking shot.
What are you doing, man?
And all the Yellow King and Carcosa stuff just showed us he's got a great eye for subtle horror. But at least one good thing came out of him dropping out. You might even call it a stranger thing. Jesus Christ, miss. Let's talk about the 2017 movie. See, when the Duffer Brothers were initially casting Stranger Things, they chose Finn Wolfhard to play the lead character Mike, or at least they tried. Turns out, Fukunaga had already snatched him up to play Richie in It, but that never happened, so the Duffers got their first pick. Then, once Stranger Things was in the can, It started production again under the new director Andres Muschietti. And the only holdover from Fukunaga's cast was Finn Wolfhard.
Doesn't smell like caca to me, senor.
It's kind of ironic that a show that took so much inspiration from It might have actually influenced the final adaptation. I mean, they brought Finn back after Stranger Things made him a star.
Someone once told me time is a flat circle. Everything we've ever done or will do, we're gonna do over and over and over again.
Although it's probably just a coincidence that they moved the setting of part 1 to the 1980s.
No way!
King wrote the book about what scared him as a kid in the 50s, but modern audiences don't have the same connection with the classics. They're updating its monstrous forms to stay as relevant and scary as the original version all those years ago. It's a departure from the book, but everything we've seen so far looks like a horrifying new take on an all-time classic. So, was it all worth it? If it means Pennywise will strike terror in the hearts of a new generation of moviegoers, you better believe it. Jesus man. Hey guys, I'm Kaya. Thanks for watching. If you're excited about the 2017 It movie like as much as I am, let me know in the comments below what you're excited to see. I know personally I'm hoping to see some blood balloons. I just want to see them go pop and then blood everywhere. Anyways, as always, please subscribe to Now This Nerd.